Hey guys, it's Warren here again with Copeland Small Engine Repair. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a video about a generator, and I've done generator videos before. It's just a regular gas-powered generator. But in this video I'm going to show you what I do when I meticulously clean a carburetor. And whenever you clean a carburetor on anything, man, be as meticulous as you can. The jets on a carburetor and some of the other tiny orifices in a carburetor are tiny. I mean, they're just so small. And you don't want to get done with a carburetor and put it back together, and the vibration and heat and fresh gasoline while that thing's running makes a tiny little speck of something break loose, and it floats around and gets stuck in the main jet. And now something's wrong. So this video is mainly so you can see what I do when I clean a carburetor. So let me get set up and we'll get started. Alrighty, let's get this air filter cover off of here. The air filter looks real good. It's not rotted and falling apart like an old piece of cake. I'm going to go ahead and take this off. Looks like 5/16. You can also use an 8mm for this. Get on there. Lay those down right there, so they can fall off later and roll around on the floor. Get this off of there. All right. I'm gonna spray just a little bit of starter fluid in here just for fun. I got the gases turned off, but I want to see if it will run before we do anything. Let me sit you guys over here. Hang on just a second. Okay. It's got a battery on it and a start switch, but I'm guessing the battery's dead, of course. Aren't they always? I'm going to check the oil. It's full of oil. The oil looks brand new. I mean, it looks like you just changed the oil in this thing. Okay. Start switch is set right. The battery's dead, obviously. So let's give it a little squirt. We'll choke it. Well, no, we don't have to choke it because we're using starter fluid. Let me give it a little squirt. We'll see what happens. It tried. Whoa, big fella. You got to be careful when you got these big heavy generators up on these little bitty lift tables. Sweet. So we know it's going to run. It's just got a fuel problem, of course. Don't they all? So let me get this off. I'm going to run some of that fuel out in a jar. Pull this crankcase breather tube out of here. I got to get an extension. My little extension is not reaching back there. I need to buy me some more extensions. I don't know where all my extensions have run off to, but seem to be short on extensions. Now let me take this one out. Oh, there's one more down here at the bottom, the back. Okay. Put that over here. It's got another hose going to the back of this plate, and that is the gas tank vent hose. Let me get it off of there. Gas tank is vented so it won't cause a vacuum. So that's off of there. Now if you got a big fuel solenoid that looks like this, these big ones with the green boot on it, these are the ones that stay open all the time and only close for like 7 or 8 seconds when you kill the engine. So when the engine is not running, these should be open. So, and if this thing has a battery on it, when you kill it, it's generating power, so it uses that power to control this. So, you know, you don't have to have a battery on one of these. If this thing did not have a battery on it, or the battery's completely dead, this solenoid still works like it's supposed to. So don't think you have to have a battery on it for this to work. Now I'm going to take the fuel line off of it. I'm going to run some fuel into a jar, and we'll see what the fuel looks like. Alrighty, fuel is off, so I'm going to take the fuel line off of here. I'm going to take a pair of needle nose. I'm going to kind of go right here. I'm going to put my screwdriver over here so I can pry this line off of there. Now let's run some gas, if it's got any in it. Yeah, it's got gas in it. Gas doesn't look horrible. If that's gas, as long as that's not water. It looks like gasoline. I'm going to get a pretty good bit in there. It's got a little bit of a yellow tint to it. A little bit of yellow isn't horrible, but the reason I drain more in there is, see, the more it gets in there, the more yellow it looks. It's not horrible though. All right. That gas is strong enough. It should run. I bet this carburetor, for some reason, the little bit of fuel in the carburetor goes bad a lot faster than all the fuel in the gas tank. I don't know if it's because it's in a little enclosed space. I'm not sure what causes it, but you can have gas in a generator and the gas in the gas tank will still be good, but the gas in the carburetor just turns to crap. So I'm going to get this carburetor off of here. We're going to open it up and look, and it's pretty simple. You just got to follow this wire lead over here. I like to take this off with the carburetor because I tested on the workbench. But I followed the lead over here, and of course they've got everything is zip tied down, and they don't want you to mess with anything. They got these little flexible, bendable metal wire wraps around everything. Of course, it keeps it nice and neat. So I'm gonna pop this open. They've got this thing. Okay. Pick up my little plastic cover they put around these connectors. And I'm just gonna unplug these little things. It ain't rocket science to unplug these. They're just, sometimes they're stuck because they've been on there since the thing was made. Now I'm going to pull it out from this little thing. There's my little, and it's just got two other little white plastic things that plug into that. Now this little thing here, the wire goes through that. Let's see if I can get it out without pulling that out of the metal. If I can pull one of these out at a time. If not, I usually just grab that with a pair of wire cutters or something, just pull it out. But I can get those out without doing that. So, now, get you guys over here. I'm going to take the little throttle lever loose. And the spring, get it off of there. And we're free. You break the carburetor loose. Sometimes they're stuck. Come on, baby, let go. I try not to tear the gaskets up. Didn't work that time though, look at that. That's gonna need a new one. All right, let's go on the workbench and take this thing apart and see how funky it is. Alrighty, we got our carburetor on the workbench. I gotta get these screws out of this fuel solenoid. Get those loose. This generator was in here last year, and I told them, I said, I recommend either running it dry or get some ethanol-free fuel to leave in it. And they just got, well, that ain't good. You can already tell, see how funky that is? That caramelized gas on there. You can tell what that carburetor is gonna look like. It's not stuck though, so it's not horrible. Now we got to get this out. And I believe that's a 14. If I remember correctly. Yeah, it's a 14. Take the... I don't know if y'all can hear the wind outside, but the wind outside right now is getting ridiculous. Now I'm going to put this down. Hold it flat on the workbench. Hopefully this thing isn't just a rotted mess in here. Man, the gas we get nowadays at the gas stations is just absolute horrible crap. Yeah, look at that. Yeah. Main jet completely stopped up. I mean, it is just, you could have pulled on this thing till your arm fell off and it was not gonna run. That main jet is completely stopped up. And you can tell people, don't let your generator just sit with regular gas in it for a year, and they just don't care. Okay, and I'm gonna take the low idle air jet out. I like to strip the carburetor down to what I call the carcass, and it's basically just everything that I'm going to take off of it. Let me get my needle nose. Damn, the wind is getting ridiculous. And I'm going to pull that. Now be careful when you pull these little low idle air jets out. You don't want to break one of these. I don't care if it takes you 10 minutes of wiggling it. Take your time. Lay that aside. Main jet. Get all our pieces over here. Now what I'll do, I'm going to get on my wire brush over there. I'm just going to hit this, take this crap off of here. I'm going to get a handheld wire brush and clean this around the edge of this seat up a little bit. But before I do any of that, I'm going to get this main jet out of here. And hopefully it'll just screw right out. Knock on wood. Get a screwdriver in there. Oh man. It's just coming right out. Now if one of these main jets doesn't come out after you put, a pretty good bit of force on it, don't force it, because you'll break the corners off of that little brass jet. And now you're screwed. If it won't come out, use a heat gun to heat this stem up and it'll come right out. But we got lucky this time. Now you got to get the emulsion tube out. And the way I get the emulsion tube out, now some carburetors, the emulsion tube is pressed in there from the factory, and no matter what kind of pressure you put on it, it's not going to come out. But see, you can see the emulsion tube down inside there. I think you can. And that's just the other end of this brass tube in here. And I'll stick a screwdriver in there and put the edge of that screwdriver on top of that emulsion tube and push it down. So I'll set the carburetor like that. I'll stick a screwdriver in there and make sure it's on top of that emulsion tube. If I can see it in there. And got the emulsion tube out. Now I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to take this O-ring. Let me get another little pick. I abuse the hell out of these little picks. Thank God they're cheap, because I break the tips off of these things all the time. I'm going to take this O-ring up. I'll probably replace this O-ring. I keep big sets of nitrile and Viton O-rings. Now I'm going to clean this, the jet, and the emulsion tube. I clean all those on the wire brush. That's why I have a very soft wire brush in my grinder. I can even clean needles and floats with the wire brush on my bench grinder. I've been doing it for years, but it's so soft it doesn't do any damage. So let me get the camera set up and I'll show you how I clean all this stuff on my wire brush. Give me just a second. Okay, I got it set up pretty good, I think. Here's my wire brush, and this is very soft. And I'm going to clean all these pieces up on this wire brush real quick. Bam! So now all these pieces are clean. I still have to clean the inside. Here they are. I got to clean the inside of all these pieces. You can't just clean the outside. You can clean the outside, all these tiny holes. So let's do that real quick. Okay, first I'm going to clean out the emulsion tube. I've got these tiny little micro drill bits. I get these on eBay, Amazon, and they come in kits like this. When I bought these for like 10 bucks, you get like 8 of these sets. They're all exactly the same, but they're tiny. They are all the way down to, I mean, like the size of a human hair. I mean, these things are micro tiny, and you can get them in a little round case that has all the sizes on it, and they come in a little flat case with a sliding door. But I'm gonna get, you want to find a drill bit that just barely fits through these holes. And I'm going to run a tiny drill bit. Whether I can see through them or not, I put a drill bit through them. And you're not trying to remove brass, you're just trying to make sure these little tiny ports are cleaned out. They're all clean. I'm going to look through it. Now I'll show you something I do. I take some carb cleaner, I hold one finger over the end, I put the red straw right here, and if it tries to slide all the way in there, I make sure I stop way back here, and I'll hold it with 2 fingers so it doesn't slide in too deep. I hold one finger over here and I'll spray it so it forces this carb cleaner to come out all these holes. I'm not going to do it right here because it's going to spray all over my camera. Well, maybe I can direct it so it won't hit you guys. Now let me do it over here. And I like to spray that. I like to see that fluid come out of every one of those holes. And then I'll hold it and do the same thing with a blow nozzle. Then I'll blow it through the sides. Then I'll look through it and make sure there's nothing like stuck to the inside of this thing. I like to see it nice and smooth and wide open all the way through. Now that's clean. When you clean a carburetor, be extremely meticulous because all these tiny little things matter. Here's the main jet, and the way I clean a main jet, I'll find one of these micro drill bits that will barely fit through it. You notice I'm not putting these little drill bits in a little drill or a pin vise or anything. I'm just doing this by hand. That one barely fits. Let's see if the next size up will fit. That fits. This big one fits. This one barely fits. Now when I get these, I'll just kind of scratch back and forth with this drill bit, and that's how I clean these jets out. I just kind of scratch it. Now you can use torch tip cleaners, work great. You just want to make sure you don't take off any meat. You don't want to remove any brass because you'll be making the jet bigger, you know, unless that's what you're trying to do. We'll get that scratched out, and then I'll blow it out with some air, and I'll look through it at the light, and now this jet's wide open and ready to go. So that's our emulsion tube, the main jet. Now we got to do this here, and I can see there's crap stuck to the inside of this, but first I'm going to do the holes going sideways through this thing, kind of scratch them out, put it through this big one, scratch around in here. Now I'm going to find a drill bit that will fit down in this big hole right here, and it didn't have to, you know, be a perfect fit. You're just kind of scratching out the crap in there. That's a pretty big hole in there. Let me look over here and get a little bit bigger bit. Oh yeah. So I went over there. I got a little bit bigger bit, so I'm just kind of scratching all the crap out of there. Spray a little cleaner in there, scratch on it a little bit more. You just want to get that dried out crud that's stuck to the side of that thing out of there. All right, and I'm going to blow it out again. Okay, I'm going to look through it, hold it up. Now this is spotless and cleaned out. Now I'm going to hit this with a wire brush and clean this discoloration off of here, and I'm going to clean this brass, the outside of this brass up a little bit with a handheld wire brush. Let me hit this real quick. Now I'm going to grab I got a whole drawer full of these little wire brushes, and I'm going to soak the brush with carb cleaner, and then I'm going to scrub this, just get some of the crap off this seat. It's on the outside of the seat. That's much better. Looks good. Now I want to clean this brass seat. Well, what's the best thing to clean brass with? I don't know. How about brass cleaner? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a cotton tip applicator. I keep these on hand just for this purpose. I'm going to break it off. It's like a wooden Q-tip. Put it in my drill, like so. And I'm going to take some brass cleaner, and it's good for cleaning aluminum and all kinds of crap. But this is a brand new bottle. The last bottle I had lasted for years, and you should have seen it. It was the label was gone off of it, but it finally, after I don't know how many years, I ran out. But I got a brand new bottle, and it's not all crusty like the other one was. I'm gonna put a little bit of brass cleaner on here, and I'm gonna shine that brass seat up with this brass cleaner. Put that down in there. When it breaks, I'm going to take it out. See, you can tell it's going down in that little hole and it's cleaning that brass. So let me take that one out. I like to do it twice. I don't know, it just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside when I do this twice. I'm going to put another little drop of cleaner on there. Do the same thing. Okay, I'm gonna blow that out. So that has cleaned the seat down in there. I can see it shining, nice shiny brass. But I want to clean the outside edges. I want to clean the outside edge of the bowl. This one ain't bad, but I'm going to show you if it's real crusty. How do you get the very corner of the bottom of this seat clean? Because that Q-tip's not doing it. So I've got some drill bits. Let's see if I got one to fit this. I've got some drill bits that I call seat scratchers, and all they are is drill bits that I've ground the center of the drill bit down, so just the edges of the drill bit stick out further and the center of the drill bit is concave. So when I put this down in this bolt, in this seat, only the outside corners of this drill bit are touching, so I'm not going to mess up the hole where the needle sets. So I'll put that in there. And I've got a drawer, a tiny drawer called Seat Scratchers. It has all kinds of different size drill bits I've done this to. So I'm just going to scratch that very bottom corner. Then I'm going to blow that out. See, when I get done with this, and this thing got fresh gas in it, and it's getting hot, and it's vibrating for an hour or two, or however long, I don't want a speck of anything coming loose from anywhere and causing a problem. Now what I do, now that my seat is clean, I'll pop this needle off, take the spring off so it don't go flying. Well, that spring's on there pretty good, so I'll leave it alone. But I'll take a paper towel. Don't soak rubber parts from carburetors in carburetor cleaner all night, like the needle, if it's got a rubber tip. And I'll just kind of do that. I'll just kind of pinch the tip of it once I soak that paper towel and get it clean. Now what I'll do, I'll just drop this needle in that seat, and I'll hold this carburetor up, and I'm going to suck on that. Actually, for you guys watching, I won't make y'all watch me do that. I'll use a professional vacuum tester. Let me put this on here. That's not 1/4 inch. I got to use my little custom-made apparatus. Okay, I got my needle sitting there, and you want the carburetor upside down. I got my little vacuum tester, and I'm going to pull a vacuum on that needle, and that needle's holding vacuum. So I know when I put this thing together, that needle's not going to leak. And this is just the needle setting in there. So if it's sealing off while the needle's just sitting there, it definitely will when the float is on it and the gas is in there, the float is pushing on that needle. So that's clean and that's ready to go. So we've got the carcass. I'm going to go ahead and put the needle back on the float so it don't disappear. So that's ready. Emulsion tube, that part, the main jet. I'm going to show you what I do with these. Okay, now I'm going to clean. This is the low idle jet. That's what I call it. And this little thing just plugs in a little tiny hole in top of the carburetor. And you've got to make sure, see, it has a hole that goes all the way through it. Let me see if I can get that on camera. Hang on. See that hole? Well, that hole goes all the way through it. Well, there's a tiny little hole in here, a tiny one. And that hole in the bottom of that connects with the hole that goes through the side of it right there. And you got to make sure that's clean. And the way I usually do that, I'll take some carb cleaner or brake cleaner, and I'll put right up to that hole right there, and I'll spray it and see if I can see that coming out of that hole on the side of it right there. So let me spray a little. Let me move some crap so I don't get carb cleaner on everything. So I'm going to spray brake clean or carb clean, whatever you want to use, right in there. I'm going to see if it comes out this hole on the side of this thing. And it is not. There's nothing coming out here. So I know this tiny hole in here is clogged up. So I'm going to get my micro drill bits. And I'm going to get a tiny one. I mean, these holes in these things are super tiny. And I just poked something out. I could feel it was stopped up. And I'm going to go up till I find one of these micro drill bits that just barely fits through here. This one's pretty tight. And I'm not putting these in any kind of little electric drill. I'm just using my hands to just kind of clean this out. And you got to be real careful with these tiny drill bits because it doesn't take much at all to snap them off. And if you snap this thing off in that tiny hole, good luck getting it out. And that's one of the reasons you don't ever throw away your old carburetors, because you never know when you might need one of these. But I've got that cleaned out now. I'm going to kind of run it back and forth. And a lot of people will drill this tiny hole out a little bit bigger. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not going to hurt it. But as long as you get it nice and clean, you're usually good to go. Let me put this up. Now I'm going to spray fluid through there again, and I'm going to watch this tiny hole right here and see if I can see fluid coming out of there. Yeah, I got fluid coming out of there now. So I know this tiny hole is clear and this is ready to go. And you always look at, there's usually a little tiny O-ring at the bottom and at the top. Make sure those O-rings are good. And when I put this back in, when I pop it back in that little hole in the top of the carburetor, I'll spray some lube on it just to help it snap in there, so I make sure I don't cut one of those little O-rings. But that's how I clean the little low idle air jet on these things. Clean this crap off of here again with my soft wire brush. This gasket looks great, but I'm going to clean this surface off with my wire brush and get it ready, and then we'll blow this out. So that's clean. If you don't have a really soft brush on a bench grinder, I recommend it because, man, they just come in handy for everything. Now I'm going to take carb cleaner and I'm going to blow through all these ports through here. I mean, just everywhere, every hole you can find. Just blow carb cleaner through it and then blow it out with air. I'm not going to do it in front of y'all so I don't get all over my camera. Blow it through the fuel outlet, straight into where the low air jet goes. The two ports on the face of the carburetor, just all over it. And then blow it off. And when you're blowing one of these out, use the full 120 psi. These don't have little check valves in them and crap that you're going to ruin, you know, with too much air pressure. Alrighty. Looks like that's done. Now we got to deal with this. Look at this crap. That crap in there. And this is an aluminum bowl, so we don't have to worry about scratching some kind of protective coating off that's going to keep it from rusting. This is aluminum. So I'm going to spray a little I'm going to put my finger over this hole in here. I'm going to spray a little carb cleaner in there. I'm just going to scratch around with a little screwdriver and see how bad. Yeah, it's coming right off. That crap is it's just enough to clog up a main jet and keep it from running. I still haven't decided if I'm gonna go ahead and I'll probably go ahead and drain every drop of that gas that's in it out, because if it may still be okay to run, but it may be halfway on its way to getting funky, if you know what I mean. And these people, you know, they paying me good money to fix this. You don't want it to, you know, they'll get it back, and if they don't need it this week, if they wait another month, the thing probably won't crank because that gas is going to go bad. So I'm just got a flat blade screwdriver. I'm just kind of scratching around, getting all the big chunks. Let me blow this out. That's a lot better. I'm gonna take my drill again, and I've got a soft brush. And I'm gonna clean this bowl out with it. A little bit more carb cleaner. And I know a lot of people, they'll put a bowl in a ultrasonic cleaner and leave it all night, but man, sometimes I just want to get on with getting on, be done with this crap. I'm going to take this little screw out. Well, no, it's not. There's not a bunch of crud down there in front of it, so I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to scratch some more of this out. Put a little carb cleaner in there one more time. A few other little spots in there I'm going to scratch clean. Now, as long as it's just discoloration, when this thing's running and got fresh gas in it, gets hot, it will clean the rest of this out, but it won't clog up the seat and it won't keep the needle from sealing off. The hell was that? I think I just heard a car crash outside. Let me blow this off. Now, that's plenty good enough. All right, everything's good to go. We need to put this thing back together. Let me check out the gasket looks really good. I usually replace those, but man, that thing looks perfect. Still soft. I guess I'll leave that alone. So, emulsion tube, main jet. Now the key is just, however you do this, however you clean things, just make sure when you put that car back together, everything is as spotless as you can get it. You get done with this thing, you don't want it to hiccup, you don't want it to stutter. I got the emulsion tube and the main jet in it. I'll put the float in it. Find my hinge pin, put that in there. That's in. I'm gonna vacuum test the needle one more time. Old school style with my mouth. And I'm gonna put the bowl on it. And usually if there's a drain on a carburetor, just point the drain to the opposite side of the carburetor than the fuel inlet, because that's usually where it goes. So float is setting level, float and needle are free. Drain is pointing, here's the inlet, drain is pointing opposite side from the inlet. Now, the bolt that holds the bowl on had this O-ring on it. Let's check it out, see what it looks like. It looks really good. Nothing wrong with that. So I'm gonna put it back on. Just like that. The groove got a tiny bit of stuff in it. Take it off the carburetor. See how meticulous I am? I'm like a psychopath about how clean everything is. But there's nothing worse than getting done with all this and cranking that thing and it's sitting there surging because you missed something. Man, that just make you want to beat your head against a wall. This work makes you want to beat your head against the wall enough as it is. Put that in there. Make sure the bowl is sitting down properly and it's turned where I want it. Now right here, don't get stupid and snap this thing off. Now I'm going to take my little jet here. I always spray a tiny bit of lube on these little jets before I put them in, just to kind of help that O-ring slip in there without cutting it. Make sure I picked up the right one. Just the one with the... Yeah, this is the one with the O-rings on it. Okay. Put that in there. Let me make sure that's the... I want to deal with the old one. Yeah, that's it. If I turn it right. that in there. And put this goofy little thing here in there like that. Put the little low throttle screw adjustment in there. And it just has to stick out a little bit. You don't have to get it. When you take it out, you don't have to be like, oh my God, how many turns did I turn that? All right. We are ready to go back on the machine. Except for one thing, we've got to test this solenoid. Make sure it's working. Since it had a little corrosion on it, I'm gonna spray some carb cleaner right here so it'll go down in there around where that needle goes. And just pump it with my finger a few times to make sure, you know, if there's any corrosion in there, might help break some of it loose. You don't want this thing hanging on you. Okay. Now, I'm going to set a battery over here. This is just my shop battery. I use to test pretty much everything. I'm going to blow this off. And I just want to make sure this thing works before I put it back on. I'm going to have to get a couple little probes. Let me get set up to test this thing. I'll be right back. Okay, I've got this thing ready to test. And like I told you at the beginning of the video, these, when they get voltage applied to them, they pop out. They're not like a regular solenoid on a ride mower zero turn. On those, when you put power to them, they suck in. But on these, when you put power to them, they pop out. So you want to make sure when it gets 12 volts, it pops out. So I'm going to hold it in. Now, if it's already out and you just put voltage to it, you can see it jump a little bit, but I want to hold it in a little bit. I think my wire's coming loose. See that? When I put power to it, it's wanting to pop out. So this thing's working. So that's good. So we know we got a working solenoid. Let me get rid of all this crap. And we've got to have an O-ring. The O-ring that was on this thing kind of turned to mush. So let me go find a good O-ring to fit this. It's got to lay down in this little groove right here. I'll be right back. Okay, and I went to these little O-ring assortments. I get these at Harbor Freight. They're cheap as dirt, but these are nitrile. I also have some made out of Viton. So nitrile or Viton will be good for these because they're not completely soaked in gasoline. They're just sealing off some. But see, I've got one I found in there. It's nice and thick. It's a perfect size. So I'm going to put this on there, and everything's been cleaned and ready to go. So you always just make sure this wire lead comes off of this solenoid going in the same direction that the little fuel inlet's on. So it's going to go in there like this. See that? So I'm going to put that down there on like that. I'm going to get my screw started. Just barely snug it up. You want to get both of these in there snug before you start cranking down on them. Now I'm going to get them stupid tight. And then I'm going to crank down on them with this because I want these suckers tight. They're stupid tight from the factory, so I make them stupid tight when they leave my shop. You don't want to go so stupid that you strip them out, though. All right, the carburetor that was filthy and wouldn't run is now clean as a whistle, ready to go, and this thing will run like brand new. I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to get every drop of gas out of this thing and put this carburetor on there, and we'll crank it up and see how she runs. I'll be back in a minute. Okay guys, I went to put the carburetor back on and remembered when I took the carburetor off, remember the gasket that was between here and the engine tore in half. So I'm going to make a new gasket. I usually stock these. I usually buy them in packs of 20 or so. But of course, when I'm trying to make a video, I'm completely out. So I'm gonna have to make a gasket for the carburetor. The one that goes between the carburetor and the air filter box is fine. But I need to make a new one for this side. So I'm gonna show you how I do that real quick. I've got a sheet. This is a 16-inch thick sheet of rubber just for this purpose. I got this off Amazon, I believe. They're real cheap. But I just got a sheet of rubber here. I've got my gasket material, which I'm running out of. You can see I've butchered this thing. I've made a lot of gaskets out of it. But I'm gonna take the carburetor. I'm gonna spray a light film of paint right here. Then I'm gonna put this gasket material down and press the carburetor on it. And this rubber just helps put the image or the outline of the paint from the carburetor on here. It's a lot easier than doing it on a flat, hard surface. This rubber kind of helps. But I'm gonna spray a little bit of paint, and a little bit of paint on this carburetor is not gonna hurt it. I'm gonna close the choke butterfly, the throttle butterfly. I'm just gonna spray a light coating of paint on here. I've just got a can of black spray paint. And it doesn't matter what color you use. So let me just get a light coat of paint on here. I'm gonna put my gasket material down. I'm gonna press this carburetor down on it. And I'm gonna put a lot of pressure down on this carburetor. Now I'm gonna pull it straight up. There's my carburetor. I'm gonna get a paper towel, wipe all the excess off of here, excuse me. Get this off of here. Now I usually put on gloves, medical gloves, so I don't get paint on my hand, but I don't care today. I've got gloves, but I'll wipe that paint off of myself later. So I'll wipe the excess off of here as best I can, get it off of here. Get my carburetor cleaned back up, set it aside. Now I've got my outline, and I'm trying to make a copy of the old gasket right here. So I got it kind of laid over here to the side so I can kind of look at it and see what it looked like. But it pretty much is just shaped like this. Now over here I'm gonna get a pin, and I can tell by looking at the old gasket went straight down right here. It came down right here, and it looks like it just went across here, straight across. So that's kind of the outline of the old gasket. And I'm going to take this rubber out from under here, and this is a piece of an old clipboard, and this makes it easier to punch these holes out with a hole punch. Let me get my hole punch, and I've got a little kit. I just wrote on here gasket maker kit, and it's got my hole punches, a razor knife, one of these little utility razor knives. It's got all the little pieces in it. But I'm gonna find a hole punch that's kind of the same size as the bolt holes in this carburetor. That's pretty close. Let me see what else I got in here. This one. So I'm going to use this one right here. And the holes will always be a tiny bit bigger than what this looks like. I got my little hammer here, so I'm going to just punch out these holes. And I punch out these holes first. Because if you punch them out later, after you cut out the gasket, it may tear out the side of the gasket. Now, I'm going to take a razor knife, just one of these. I'm going to cut out the hole. I don't have a punch big enough for this big hole right here. And I think I've cut that out. Now the holes look good. Now I'm going to cut this center hole out. I'm going to put this right here. I'm going to go right on the edge of that. I'm putting a lot of downforce on it. Try to keep y'all where y'all can see what I'm doing. because I don't want to order a gasket, wait for it to get here to finish this up. I want to finish this crap up right now. And you don't want to slip while you're doing this and cut out the side of the gasket, because you're going to have to start over. I got that out. Now I'm going to get some scissors. Just these cheap shop scissors. And first thing I'm going to do is kind of cut around this thing, kind of loosely, way away from the border. I'm going to set the rest of this gasket material aside. Now I'm just going to cut this out. And you don't have to be real perfect on the outside. You can leave a little bit extra slack out there, not too much. Take that out. Just be careful you don't cut through your side, because you don't want to start over. And there's one hole I forgot to punch. There's a hole. Let me get this gasket over here. There's one hole. Let me see. This little tiny hole right here. I gotta punch it out. So let me lay this down kind of in the same pattern. Just lay it on here. Kind of a rough idea where that hole needs to go. Get that lined up. This old gasket's just all out of whack. I'm going to take a ballpoint pen and just kind of mark where that is. Now I'm going to get a really small hole punch. See what I got over here. This one ought to work. Got a really small one. Get my hammer. Put that down on there like that. And there we go. Now let me get my carburetor over here. Bada bing, bada boom. We are ready to go. All right, now let's go over there and put this thing on that machine and crank it. Alrighty, let's get our new gasket on there we made. Yeah, and somebody had put some kind of silicone or gasket maker or something on here before they put the other gasket on, because they've had somebody tinkering with this thing before they brought it to me. But whenever you do this, don't put anything on here. Don't use silicone or gasket maker or glue. You know, you should just have clean surfaces with nice clean gaskets. So let me slide my new gasket on here I made. That's perfect. And I make sure that this hole does have the groove behind it in this plastic. And get my carburetor up here. Slide my carburetor on. Get this hose out of the way. I'm going to put my throttle control rod down in this little black thing on the top of the butterfly, and I'm going to hook my spring up. I'm going to bend the end of this spring closed a little bit more. It's kind of spread open. There's my spring, so that's hooked up. Nice and simple. There's nothing complicated about these. Now what I'm going to do, I always ask the client, do you want, or the customer, do you want gas in this thing when you get it back, or you want it empty? And this customer wants it empty. Well, I've already got the gas tank bone dry. I mean, it ain't got a drop of gas in it. So what I'm going to do is set up a little funnel, and I'm just going to put gas in the carburetor bowl, and the little fuel line I'm going to have running off of this thing. So this thing can run for just a minute, so I can test it, make sure it's putting out electricity, make sure it runs properly, and then I'll let it run till it runs out of gas, and when they get it back, it won't have any gas in it. So let me get that set up, and we'll do that. Give me just a minute. All right, guys, I got my little fuel line set up here. It's just a piece of fuel line with a little funnel on it. And I've got the two nuts on the carburetor just to hold it on tight. You notice I don't have the air filter housing and the air filter and all that crap on it, because if this thing doesn't run right, I may have to pull the carburetor back off. So I don't want to put all that on there because it may have to come right back off. So I just got the carburetor tight with the 2 nuts just to see if this thing will run. I got the fuel solenoid plugged back in. And like I said before, the fuel solenoid on these generators with this big green boot on the bottom of the fuel solenoid, they don't work like the fuel solenoid on a ride more or zero turn. On a riding more or zero turn, the fuel solenoid stays shut when the engine is not running. And when you turn the key on, as soon as it gets power to the solenoid, the little plunger on the solenoid pops back and opens up the main jet, and the main jet stays open while the engine is running and the key is on. Now when you turn the key off on a ride more or zero turn, when you turn the key off on those, the fuel solenoid pops shut and it stays shut the whole time that thing is sitting there not running. Well, on these, like right now, this engine is not running. The fuel solenoid on this thing right now is open. And the fuel solenoid on engines like this with carburetors like this, that fuel solenoid stays open all the time. The only time it closes is when you kill this engine. It closes for like 8 seconds to prevent backfire. After 8 seconds, it pops back open. So while these are just sitting, not doing anything, the fuel solenoid, the main jet is open. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're working on stuff like this. But I got my little fuel line rigged up so I don't have to put gas in the tank. I got my carburetor tight. I've got a drill over here with the trigger zip tied down, and I'm going to plug it in as soon as this thing is running just to see if we've got power, make sure it's generating electricity. So let's choke it, flip that to start, and let's see if this thing will run. Cross your fingers. Oh man, you couldn't ask for that thing to run any better than that. Well, it should. The carburetor is absolutely spotless and it's got fresh gas in it. And when I plug the drill in, the drill works. So we're generating electricity and all is good. So let me get all this crap off of here. I'm going to take this little auxiliary fuel line I made off of here. I'm going to turn the camera off and let it run till it runs all this fuel out of here because I'd like to hear it run for a little bit longer. So let me run the carburetor out of gas till it dies, and then we'll start back up and I'll put the air filter housing and everything back on it and we'll finish this one up. I'll be right back. Alrighty, we know she's running. Let's finish this thing up. I got the nuts taken off that I had holding the carburetor on. Let's get the original fuel line on it. I ran it till it completely died, so it's gas tank's empty, carburetor's empty. Put this hose clamp on here. Everything looks good. Everything's ready to go. Put this on here. First I'm gonna put this little tank vent line on the back of this air filter plate. Got it on there all the way. Let me put the hose clamp up on it. All right, that's done. I can put this on here. I'm gonna shove the crankcase breather tube. Well, you know what? Let me put this other crap on here first. Let me get the nuts on here for the breather plate. I'm gonna make sure the little stud on the back of this plate is going through the hole down here, and I'm gonna get the nut started for it. Let me back you guys up a little bit. Get that on there. Now, get the nut on the back down here. That's all good. I'm gonna give these another little shot. Okay, that's all good now. I'm gonna put this apparatus in there. I'm gonna put the crankcase breather tube down in the hole now. So that's done. I gotta start all these little 5/16. And to start these, I'm gonna put this, these are 5/16 or 8mm. I'm gonna put them, I'm just gonna use the extension in the socket to get them started. I did test the battery. I charged the battery on this thing, and the battery is no good, of course. Batteries on these generators, you can't just let them sit for a year because they lose their charge and then they won't take a charge. If you have a generator with a battery on it, you really kind of need to leave a battery tender on it, or do something to keep that battery charged. You can't just ignore these things and expect that little battery to be good when you go back to use it. The little battery on it, I'm gonna have to tell them if they want the battery start, we're gonna have to get them a new battery. And batteries, when you put a battery on a battery charger doesn't tell you the battery is good. If a battery charger shows that a battery is fully charged, that doesn't mean the battery's good. That means that battery has stopped taking electricity. It stopped taking a charge. So a battery can be bad. It can stop taking voltage. It can stop taking a charge. The battery charger will show fully charged, but the battery's junk. So use a meter and a battery tester to test your batteries. Don't go by what the battery charger is telling you. Got that on there. Put this in here. I'm putting this back on here just like they had it. Back on there like that. Put this on here like so. That doesn't clamp down very tight. There we go. That's all good, and she's done. She runs perfect. She's putting out power. The gas tank's bone dry. The carburetor's empty. Everything's hooked back up, and she's ready to roll except for the battery. I got to call this customer and see if they want to come get it, because it's supposed to drop down into the 20s for the next week at night. And I don't know if they want to have this at home just in case, because this little town we live in, man, the power goes out when the wind blows, you know what I mean? So I got to let them know they need a new battery. But that's all for this one. Everything's good to go. Catch me later.